Hello, my friends. I'm Nick Lowry, host of the Comeback Journey podcast. For my entire life, I was trapped in a cycle of unhealthy relationships. Family, friends, lovers, all of it. Couple that with almost a decade of active drug and alcohol addiction, and that makes for quite a toxic combination. A few years ago, I decided to look inward, and what I found was that by healing, growing, and improving the relationship I have with myself, I was able to improve every other relationship in my life. It all started with me. My mission with this podcast is to empower you to cultivate healthy relationships, both with yourself and others, so you can experience a more meaningful and satisfying life.
All right, my friends, welcome back to the Comeback Journey podcast. Here with me today is Jimmy DeFalco. He is a parenting coach, a recovering addict, and I love his story. I love what he represents. We connected last year through Instagram. Turns out we have some things in common, and we got to know each other a little bit last year, and I'm glad that we're putting this podcast together. We've been going back and forth a little bit with times and dates, so we finally got it set, and I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to have you here. You want to introduce yourself, give a little background, and we'll jump in?
Yeah, what's up, guys? Nick, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I've watched a lot of the recent guests that you've had come on, so they have some incredible stories, incredible value to add, and I just hope that I can follow in line with the people that I've seen that have been on your podcast before. I'm confident that I will, and yeah, guys, I'm a parenting coach for the last about 2.5 years. I've been doing simple like mindset, lifestyle, and fitness coaching, but I always felt like I wasn't really making the impact that I could, or I wasn't narrowing down on a specific niche. And so about 6 months ago, and I'll tell you guys a little bit more about it later, I came from an extremely toxic upbringing. So I'm creating a program that's called Inside Out Parenting that is essentially going to teach parents how to become their highest selves, remove some of their limiting beliefs and generational curses, so that they in turn can raise the most resilient, successful, and happy children, when they become teenagers and adults.
That's an amazing goal to shoot for, because it seems to me that whether parents realize it or not, even if they have the best intentions, they still tend to teach their children beliefs and habits that recreate, as you said, these generational curses. And I don't have children, but I've seen it with family and friends, and it's never that I've seen in a malicious way, and yet it unfolds in a way that is not in the best interests of molding children into an adult who is their best self.
Dude, you nailed it on the head right there. It's never done with malicious intent. I'll get into some of the things my father did to me later, but even now I realize the things he did to me wasn't done with malicious intent. He didn't mean to he didn't turn me into a drug addict, but he didn't mean to send me down that path. Right. And a lot of parents, it may not be as significant as it was with my upbringing, but, just little simple things on the day-to-day that you don't realize, can really have a profound impact on your child, how they view themselves, and how they perceive how they fit into the world. So you have to be extremely careful with pretty much everything that you say and do. And most parents, you can have the purest heart in the world, but you're still going to pass down some toxic generational curses that you learned from your parents, just unknowingly from a subconscious level.
I can see how that would cause some discomfort in the lives of the children as they're growing up. And like you said, like the parents, they generally don't recognize that it's just what they were taught from their parents. Mm-hmm. And so it just creates this ongoing cycle. And
I'm sorry, go ahead. Didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, just something simple. Like if you're at Target and they're like, "Mom, can I have this?" And you're just like, "Oh, money doesn't grow on trees. Like I don't have enough." You're just, there's other ways that you can tell them that like, hey, you don't need an extra toy right now. You have enough toys. Maybe there's something you can do at home to earn that toy or something like that. Cause just the example I just said before, the child is going to take it as, okay, money is hard to come by. We don't have enough of it and we have to be scarce with it. And, that's just setting them up for an unhealthy financial future.
I never thought about it like that. I mean, I knew that, simple ways to phrase things have an impact, but the example that you gave, just that small example, really makes me think about how important it is to use words in a way that will instill truthfulness, but also empowerment.
Exactly, dude. That I love how you just put that. Actually, you don't want to lie to them, but you also don't want to disempower them. So what you just said right there, you nailed it on the head, bro.
So let's back up a little bit. So let's get some backstory on you, who you are. So where are you from? Where'd you grow up? Do you have any siblings? Things of that nature.
Yeah. So I grew up in a little town right outside of Orlando, Florida called Sanford. I have two younger brothers. Well, I had, I'll get into more of that later, and two younger sisters. So I'm the oldest of five. And I like to say I essentially grew up in pretty much like a Wolf of Wall Street type of environment. My father owned a very successful advertising agency. And from ever since I could remember, he was making, 7 figures plus a year. And we lived a pretty extravagant lifestyle in a 5-bedroom house on a lake, boats, jet skis, limos. We also had like a 60-foot yacht that we would take deep sea fishing. Pretty much, I thought I was living the best childhood that anyone could ever have. Little did I realize, though, the damaging, I guess, coping mechanisms and ways of life that my father was teaching me. Because even though he was super successful, a day didn't go by where he didn't, snort coke, take pills, go to the strip club, get in a bar fight, whatever it was. So my father, although he was super successful, he had a lot of these bad characteristic and lifestyle traits, but I didn't see them as bad at the time because he had the world in his hand. Whatever he said, he could have. Whatever he wanted, he got. I went to like 4 or 5 different World Series growing up in New York. Just a quick example of how crazy my father was. So I was about 13 years old, and he took me and my younger brother to New York. He was 9 at the time, I believe, to watch the Yankees play in the World Series. They were playing against the Diamondbacks. They lost in Game 6, and I was extremely let down. Baseball was life. So instead of him, taking me to get ice cream or to the toy store or something at 13 years old, he got me and my 9-year-old brother drunk, and he bought me an escort from New York. And that's how I lost
13 years old.
At 13 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was pretty much all done in front of my brother, like not like literally, but like he was just in the other room. He wasn't stupid. Like he knew, kind of what was going on. So, and at the time I thought that was one of the coolest experiences that a 13-year-old could have. I was like, my dad's fucking awesome. But, as I got older, I realized that it taught me a lot of just negative coping mechanisms. Like, look, I was sad because they lost. So when you're sad, you get drunk and you have sex. Like, that's what that taught me, right? It taught me not to treat women like they should be treated and like how I treat my girlfriend now. It taught me to treat them like objects. So fast forward to, high school and college, I was known pretty much as just like the party guy. Everyone liked me. I was the life of the party. I was always drunk. Half the time I was blacked out. But I was having a good time, or so I thought. And right when I graduated college was in 2008, when everything crashed and everyone lost everything. So I thought that I was stepping into, an 8-figure company. I was going to work for it for a couple of years. My dad was going to retire. I was going to take over it, and I was going to make more money, fuck more girls, snort more drugs, and win more fights than my dad ever did. I was going to make his life look small. But a few months after I started working for him, the market crashed. And at that same time, my father had back surgery, and he was prescribed Oxycontins, which is basically synthetic heroin. And so at the same time, my father probably, who was smart and bright enough, he probably would have been able to work his way out of it, but he was addicted to the pills. And, you know, we pretty much lost everything in the blink of an eye. The company, the houses, the cars, the boats, everything. So then my father wants me to open up a business in my own name. So I open up a business in my own name because he had too much bad debt associated with his name. Excuse me. So we're running a business for about a year. He's in and out of jail at this time, mind you, because he just keeps on getting DUIs. He keeps getting in bar fights. He keeps fucking up. So I'm a 21-year-old kid, literally sometimes having like a client on one phone, my dad from jail with the other phone, like telling the client what my dad wants him to tell him, you know, because I was just a couple of months out of college. I didn't know how to run the business yet. And probably about after a year, I get a letter in the mail. This is from the IRS. And it said I owed in excess of $40,000 in payroll taxes. So I was just doing sales. That's all I was doing. My dad was running the business, even though it was technically mine. And so he wasn't paying the payroll taxes. So I had to immediately shut the company down. I shut the company down. A few days later, my dad literally comes to my house and he kicks the front door off its hinges at like 6 a.m. And I knew immediately when I heard him like, Jimmy, where you at? Like, I knew immediately he was coming to fight me because he was calling me for days, telling me what he was going to do. So I remember it was like 6 a.m. I wake up, I throw my shorts on, and I remember very specifically, I walked out in like this little hallway where my room was. And I was like, I'm right here, motherfucker. And he comes rushing towards me. I remember I kind of took a step back, he throws a hook, and I get him in like a little headlock. And remember, this is my fucking father. Like, I don't really want to fight or hurt him. And mind you, I was scared of him my whole life. He was an extremely intimidating guy, semi-pro boxer, wrestler in high school. I've seen him fuck up some big dudes. But I realized, you know, he was kind of getting older. I was getting more into my prime. But when I had him in that headlock, I remember just hitting him like a few times like this. And my hair standing up in my arms because I still remember he looked at me straight in the eyes and he goes, "That's all you got, motherfucker." And I just remember then just wailing, bro, just boom, boom, 5-6 times. My roommate had a very aggressive pit bull. He jumps up and he bites me. I'm not sure if you can see it on camera, but he bites me clear through my ear. So I drop him. He's all bloody. I got blood dripping down from me. And I basically called the cops, picked my lifeless dad up from under his arms, dragged him out to the driveway, and, you know, let the cops take him. And that was pretty much the beginning to where alcohol and drugs weren't a fun party thing anymore. That was when I really felt I started to kind of like self-medicate and use the alcohol and the drugs to forget about all of the things that were going on in my life.
That's some heavy stuff.
Yeah, man. And then at this point in my life, I moved downtown, drinking a lot, doing a lot of coke. And because I literally couldn't keep on my feet. I was drinking so much, I was falling on my face because I was also prescribed a Klonopin. And so I would wake up every day for like 8 or 9 years, which is basically a form of Xanax. I would wake up and the first thing I would do is snort a Klonopin. I took a piss, snorted a Klonopin, had my coffee. That was my routine. And so when I drank alcohol, it got me really bad. I even fell. This is a fake tooth right here. I fell. I woke up one morning. I didn't even know why. I didn't even know how, to this day, how it happened, right? I was at home. No one was there. I think I just fell, but still no one to this day knows what happened. But this is the point in time where I met a girl, we were dating a little bit, and she told me she was pregnant. I was not ready to be a father, but I was ready to do the right thing. So we moved out of downtown. We moved to a house in a suburb, and this is where the opiates really took control and power over me. Because with the coke, with the alcohol, with the weed, I was functioning. I still was able to get to my job. I still was able to work. But once the opiates came in conjunction with the Xanax and the Klonopins, they got a hold of me, dude. And I went down a dark hole really, really fast.
How old were you at this point?
At this point, I was probably about 26, 27.
Okay.
Yeah, about 27. I'm 34 now, for reference. Let me pull my dog out real quick. Go. Sorry, dude. So at this point in my life, I'm snorting 3 or 4 30 milligram oxys a day in conjunction with the Klonopins. I'm basically just a walking stupor. I don't even remember that year and a half of my life really, which is sad because that's the first year and a half, that my son was alive. And I'll really never forgive myself for that, but I try to be the best father I can moving forward to kind of make up for those lost times. But eventually my girl sent me to rehab. I was in rehab for 3 weeks, got out, was sober for like a month, and then went back to using for 6 or to 8 months again, somewhere around there. She kicked me out again. And then she sent me, I didn't have anywhere to go. My mom wouldn't take me in. My friends wouldn't take me in because I was literally lying and stealing from all of them. Anything I could take from their house to sell or to do anything, I would. I was in a terribly bad spot. And so I went to my father's. I didn't have anywhere else to go. I haven't talked to him in like 4 or 5 years, but I had nowhere else to go and he took me in. But instead of him trying to help me get my life back on straight, he had a whole bunch of pills, a whole bunch of coke, and we literally just got high together for like a week straight. And then my girl calls me, she tells me she's pregnant again. I'm just like, fuck me. I can't do this. Like, there's no way. There's no way I'm gonna be able to do this. So I decided like I was just gonna take my own life because there was no way I could go from where I was to where I needed to be a father of 2 children. No way possible. So I slid my wrist a few times, I think really superficially, more for help than really with the intent to ever do that. But that got me Baker Acted, which in Florida, you can be in a mental health facility for 72 hours if you're a threat to yourself. Mm-hmm. And in the Baker Act, I at that point, I didn't care what happened to myself. Jail, death, I didn't really care. But I had a vision that if I continued down this path, my kids were going to end up the same way that I did. And ever since I walked out of that facility, I vowed to myself, never go back to those hard drugs. And from that point, I started making positive steps and changes to turn my life around.
And at this point, you said you're 27, 28, something.
Yeah.
Something
So at this point, well, I was at 27 when I really started using, first using the opiates. At this point, I'm 29, almost 30.
Okay.
So it happened. It went on for about 2 years.
Okay. Yeah. And so when you left this facility that you were in, that was like the turning point for you to kind of get back on a path of, like you said, positive life choices and trying to recreate yourself in a way that would be in your children's best interests.
Yeah,
was that the motivating factor?
The motivating factor was my children, because at that point I really didn't give a fuck what happened to me. I hated myself. Like, I truly did. I hated everything about myself. So I didn't care what happened to me, but I cared what happened to my children. So they were the motivating factor to change and turn my life around. And that's why I think I was able to do it so quickly. And one important part where I left out of this, also a big factor for turning my life around, was realizing and understanding that the situation that I was in was nobody's fault but my fucking own. Nobody's. And because for a decade, right? Because I was put in a lot of bad situations, right? But it was my responses to those circumstances that I went through that really put me to where I was, not the situations themselves. But I blamed the economy. I blamed my father. I blamed God. I blamed bad luck. I never once looked at myself and said, hey, maybe you're not making the right fucking decisions. But I remember that same day where I was slitting my wrist, I was sitting there and thinking, and I don't know what hit me. I don't know what came over me, but it was this overwhelming sense of like responsibility and accountability that holy fuck, like it's not any of those people's or things' fault. It's all my fault. And I put myself here. And that's really what hurt so bad to where it led me to kind of want to take my life, because that pain, it was so excruciating realizing that where I was at was no one's fault but my own. And I think in that one moment, it shifted the neurological connection that I had to drugs and partying as an escape to now I associated the drugs and partying to pain. Yeah, it was such a deep, like spiritual, just out of body, just painful experience. The pain was so deep, bro. I can't even begin to put it into words. But that's truly what I think happened, because after I got out of that facility, yeah, it was hard. I was addicted to drugs for a long time, but I had a lot of time clean and went back numerous times, right? This time was 10 to 20 times easier than any of the other times that I did, because again, I feel like I made a new neurological connection that instead of associating the pills and partying with fun and a getaway and escape, I now associated pills and drugs with pain and sorrow and hurt and that same type of life for my children. So that made it a million times easier to put the drugs down and make better decisions.
You know, it's interesting for me in my story, when I got clean and sober, I had, similar to you, not the exact same circumstances, but I had this like epiphany, like this moment of clarity in the midst of being intoxicated on multiple substances, where it just hit me like, at that point I was 25 years old, and I was like, what am I doing with my life? You know, I was unemployed. I was living at my mom's house, like on the verge of getting kicked out. Like I could feel it. Like she was at her wit's end. I didn't have a car. I didn't have anywhere to go. So like if I were to get kicked out, I would be homeless, without a car, no money. None of my friends would take me in either, because like I was also the sketchy dude that would, like, you know, steal money and, you know, take things and cut people's drugs with sugar so that I could have extra for me. And so like nobody wanted me around. And I had this moment of clarity where I was like, okay, like, is this what my life is going to be? Is that, like, I have two options right now. I can continue what I'm doing, and like I have a pretty good idea what that path is going to look like, or I can get my shit together and I can, you know, make this change. And I was in my bedroom at my mom's house, and my mom worked at home, so she was like 15 feet away in the other room. But I didn't want her to see me because I looked like a crackhead. Like I was on ecstasy and I was doing coke and drinking, and like I had been up for days. And I texted her and I was like, I think I need to go back to rehab. And I didn't go immediately, but once I went like that, I had that why, like that reason for wanting to change. And I had been to rehab before, one prior time, and I was in an inpatient program for 45 days, and inside of 2 weeks after I got out, I was right back at it, because I didn't have a strong enough reason to not to stop using. And so in 2017, when I actually stopped, it was so much easier. Like you said, like it was like 10 to 20 times easier, because I had a reason. And granted, your reason, like your children, that's a defining moment in your life right there, like making that decision. You know, 20, 30 years from now, you're going to still look back on that and probably feel the same way. Like, wow, that was monumental. And for me, it's similar. Like I had this experience where I knew without a doubt that if I didn't stop, I would either be incarcerated for a long time or like I wouldn't make it past the age of 35.
Mhm.
Maybe not even that far, you know. And I have a lot of respect for you for being able to pull yourself out of that situation, because it's
Likewise, brother.
tough. Yeah, it's tough, you know, being addicted to drugs and alcohol, but at the same time struggling so immensely with your mental and emotional health on top of those. You know, it's a really dark place to be in.
Yeah, it really is. And I think addiction comes from that mental and emotional pain and struggle, because we don't want to feel that. We don't want to think our thoughts. We don't want to look at ourselves in the mirror. And snorting that pill, taking that drink or that drug makes that feeling go away temporarily, but then when it runs off, it's even worse than before. So you just get caught in this vicious fucking cycle.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, you know, I'm of the belief that being dependent on substances, drugs and alcohol is just it's treating a symptom. It has nothing to do with the underlying reason of why you're using them in the first place.
No.
And until you get to that level, at least a very basic understanding and creating a reason strong enough to want to stop, to at least see what's on the other end, it's almost impossible to get yourself out of that situation.
Yeah, it really is, man. And even when you think you're out, so many people go back.
Right.
My brother, may he rest in peace. I never got to heroin. Before my girl sent me to rehab, I was probably a few days out because those pills were getting expensive. But my brother was, he was shooting up heroin for a long time, many, many years. I don't even know how long, 7 or 8 years at least. He spent 5 years total in prison, a 3-year bid, a 2-year bid. And then he finally got clean and sober. He was clean and sober for 2 years. And he was a fucking machine. I lived with him for those 2 years. He would wake up at 4:30 every single day, so 6 days a week, up at 4:30 at the gym, 10, 12-hour day, out in the sun, come back, do it all over again. I swear to God, in the first 18 months that I lived with him, he took maybe 4 or 5 days off total.
Wow.
He was working 7 days a week. He started his own business. He was making really good money, sometimes $1,000, $1,500 in a day. And when COVID happened, he lost his meetings, he lost his church, he lost his support system. And me and him, we both thought he was fine because he was just doing so well. We both thought it wasn't possible for him to go back. But on his birthday weekend, he had a few beers with his girl. Then he was smoking weed. Before you knew it, he was sticking the needle back in his arm. And I actually found his body on a Sunday morning, lying in his bedroom.
I'm sorry. That's,
yeah, man.
I can't imagine.
Yeah,
and this was just last year.
This was 6 months ago. Yeah, in November 1st, and yeah, I miss him a lot. But that's, I think, a reason why I decided to make this change in my company and the people that I coach and how I work with people, because I truly believe, again, I don't think many parents are to the extreme, buying your kids prostitutes at 13, like my father was. But I fully believe that if my father wasn't the way that he was, and maybe if he had some guidance and he didn't, do those things to us, maybe he'd still be here today. Maybe not, who knows? But that's where kind of I get my why and my motivation is from all the toxic traits that my father taught me and my brother. I want to minimize those for other kids, although they may be a lot more minimal and smaller than the things that my father taught us, but it doesn't mean that the impact can't be just as massive on their lives moving forward.
Yeah, this is honestly can't think of a single person on the planet better suited to be a parenting coach, because you've seen the extreme, and in those experiences there's a gift, and you have the awareness and the understanding to recognize how impactful even the smallest things are in the way that children absorb thoughts and behaviors and habits and belief systems, and you manage to turn these experiences into a way that will benefit potentially untold numbers of children moving forward, with this coaching that you're going to be doing. And it's a beautiful thing, in the midst of all the tragedy that you've experienced recently and throughout your life. It's amazing to see how you were able to navigate through these situations and come out not only with a deeper understanding of who you are, but genuinely wanting to pass this on to other people and to create a better life for those to come. And it it seems to me like that would take a massive amount of resilience and fortitude and genuine love of life. And you have that. And your story is inspirational, to say the least.
Well, thank you, brother. And it's actually been, I really appreciate that, dude. It's actually been a while since I've shared my story, because I used to do speaking engagements once or twice a month, but once COVID hit, I stopped. And sometimes I forget, dude, honestly, how far I've come. I get so caught up in today's struggles, and today, what's going on today and yesterday, that I really forget where I came from, man. So your words right there truly just touched me, man. They mean a lot.
Yeah, I can relate. I just hit 4 years sober last month, and it's I'm earlier this year I moved from San Diego to Scottsdale, Arizona, and I moved out here by myself, and I'm living by myself, and I get so caught up in the day-to-day out here of like struggling to I want to build my business and my coaching program and build this podcast, and I'm still working as a server in a restaurant to pay my bills, and I get so caught up in the day-to-day of like, what are my immediate issues, that I
Yep.
forget to look back and be like, man, 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago, was like I would be staying up for 4, 5, 6 days at a time, no sleep, just drinking, taking ecstasy and coke and
We would
Xanax
have
and all these
we would
things.
have
And
given anything to give the life we have today.
for sure,
We
for
would have given,
sure.
we would have, if you told me what my life was today, I would be like, I would pay any amount, I would do any fucking thing to live this type of life. But like, now that I'm here, my brain tries to trick me that sometimes, that it's not good enough and I need to do better. And, so just, I want everyone to know, like, those thoughts are normal, it's normal.
Yeah.
It's just the difference between, a lot of people who accomplish things and those who don't. They either they listen to those thoughts, or they do the inner work and they push through and they overcome those thoughts,
Yeah.
and they act anyway even though they're scared as fuck.
Yeah. It's interesting. I remember like before we started recording, we were talking about like, building businesses and, what happened at the beginning of the pandemic. And last year, my self-care routines were optimal. I had a very incredible morning and evening routine, and I was really taking care of myself. And I've found that it took me a while. Once I moved to Arizona, I was in it seemed like almost a constant like fight or flight response of trying to make it work on my own, that I ignored the aspect of self-care that was necessary for me to carry myself in a way that would help me achieve the things that I wanted to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a few months. It's May, and I moved out here in January, and just within the last few weeks is when I really started to get back in my rhythm.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes knocking back a couple of steps to be able to recognize, like, okay, like, you go from the very bottom to like a life that you never believed possible, and then you start sometimes slowly drifting back down. And thankfully caught myself where I was like, okay, like, what was I doing before, you know 6 months ago, 12 months ago, 18 months ago, where I was just feeling like I was crushing life?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I get back to that? Because you can't live a perfect day every single day. It's not
No.
realistic. And so to have that awareness and understanding, and also to remember, like you mentioned before, like, remember where you came from, like what you went through to get you to where you are at right now. And also to keep in mind what you mentioned much earlier in the podcast about recognizing that the negative situations that you had experienced, while you may not have caused the situations, the reactions and the responses that you had led you down that dark path. And the same is true for a positive path to bring you into a higher state of being. It's all your responsibility. You have the power to create your reality. And keeping that in mind, at least for me, has really helped to zoom out and see the bigger picture as often as I can.
Yeah, dude. I'm glad you mentioned that, bro. Because in the 5 years, since I got clean, um, I've had many of those. Where for a few months I was absolutely killing it, maybe a year and a half, and then I take a few steps back for a little bit, and then I get back on track, and then you kind of fall off a little bit. I've had a lot of different things going on in my life too that kind of seem to um, I truly believe like the more impact that you are going to make on the world, the more positive impact, I think the more roadblocks you're going to hit, you know,
I love
throughout,
that.
whether you want to call it like just like evil forces or whatever it may be. Like, I truly believe the more positive impact you're going to make, the harder it's going to be for you to make that impact. Um, and I haven't had an easy road over the last 5 years to get here. So, um, yeah, it's very key. Like you said, the self-awareness is key. I've been off my morning routine for the last, I just moved into a new house 2 weeks ago. And this is like the first week actually where there wasn't boxes everywhere and just everything. So I'm still kind of trying to get into my routine in the new house and getting a flow and everything like that. Because like you said, as quick as you fell out of that, you put a solid week together, you're right fucking back.
Right.
That's the beauty of it. Like you can feel like on today, let's say Friday, you can feel like the worst piece of shit in the world. But if Saturday through next Friday, you stay on your shit and you do everything you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it, you're going to feel like on fire just a week later. It doesn't take long.
That's a great reminder. That really hit me, because sometimes, that feeling where, like, let's give the example of the gym. Like, you go to the gym consistently for like a year and a half, and then like you start slacking off on the gym a little bit, and you don't go for a week, and then you don't go for a month, and then you don't go for 2 months, and then just the thought of going to the gym like freezes you, and you're like, well, oh man, it's going to take so long to get back. Like, what's the point? You start getting these thoughts of like, well, like it's too overwhelming of a challenge. And so
Yeah.
at least for me, like, my reaction, my initial response is to just avoid it.
Yeah.
And
I do the same thing.
and I think it's really important to reiterate what you just said for those who are going to listen to this, that it's as simple as, at least initially, it's as simple as putting just a solid week together of doing what you say you're going to do when you said you're going to do it, and just watch in a week how you feel and how you feel about life and how you feel about yourself. Because there's I mentioned this on a recent podcast, but there's have you ever heard of the artist NF?
Come on, Sibyl. Sorry, bro. Come on. Sorry, she was barking. The artist MF? No.
Yeah, NF. He's a rapper, and he has this. I'm gonna look up the lyrics real quick just because it's amazing. He says, where are we at here? The beginning of the second verse. He says, if you made a list of people that you trusted, would you put your name down? Do you know who you are when you look at life and you talk about yours? Do you feel proud? Are you leaving a mark or scared to make a bad impression, so you just go hide in the dark? And it's, it really speaks to the concept of not balancing, but having the awareness to understand self-trust and self-betrayal. And when you don't keep your word to yourself, you create this cycle of, you might tell yourself you're going to do something, but your underlying belief is that you're not going to do it.
You already know. Yeah, you
Right.
already fucking know. Yeah. I know
so
the feeling. I know it's not a good feeling.
No, it's not.
So eventually you just stop telling yourself you're going to do shit.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
you eventually just stop. Yeah, it's the worst.
It's a dangerous place to be in. But as you mentioned before, and I want to reiterate this again, just because of how profoundly important it is, and I'm glad that you mentioned it, is all you have to do is keep your word to yourself. Just do it for a week.
Yeah.
And watch how you that's how you start to create these belief systems of self-worth and self-trust and self-love, because you love yourself enough to keep your word to yourself. And that, above most other things, will take you to places that you've never been.
Exactly, dude. And what really shifted this for me and what really helped me follow through more with that concept was understanding that when my alarm went off, it wasn't about the 10 minutes I can hit for snooze, right? I can make up 10 minutes throughout the day. Not that big of a deal, right? But when I started equating that to lying to myself, and that we make hundreds, if not thousands of these decisions every single day, and with each single decision, you're either building yourself up a little bit or you're breaking yourself down a little bit. So when I was able to think about it, not hitting the snooze button, not as just an extra 10 minutes, but as lying to myself and breaking myself down. And so what happens is you make so many of these decisions every single day, and then all of a sudden you wake up and you're 40 years old and you're like, well, what the fuck? Like, what happened to my life? I haven't accomplished anything. I don't like who I am. Well, because over time you've programmed yourself, like you said, that you already know deep down you're not going to do what you say you're going to do. And then eventually you just stop telling yourself you're going to do it. And then you wake up one day, you're like, what happened to my life? So being able to understand that the cheat meal isn't just a cheat meal. It's lying to yourself. It's, getting farther away from the type of person you want to become to accomplish the type of things that you want to.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
I think that's a great place to end it here. Where, if people want to get in contact with you, where can they find you?
So Instagram, Jimmy_DeFalco, TikTok, Jimmy DeFalco, and Facebook, just Jimmy DeFalco as well. I also have, if you want to hear like more in-depth version of my story, I have a TEDx talk. If you just YouTube Change is Possible, Jimmy DeFalco, you'll be able to find that. And like I said, I do have, for the parents out here listening, I do have a new program launching within the next 30 to 45 days called Inside Out Parenting. So keep an eye on my Instagram and or Facebook for updates on that.
Beautiful, beautiful, my friend. Thank you so much for coming on here and being vulnerable and sharing your story. And I look forward to what the future has to hold for you.
Hey, thank you, brother. And likewise, I can't wait to see what both of us can accomplish.
Yes, sir. Beautiful. All right, my friends, signing out.
This concludes another episode of the Comeback Journey podcast. I am incredibly passionate about delivering these messages to a much larger audience, but I can't do that without your help. If today's episode resonated with you, it would mean the world to me if you shared it. Whether that's sending the episode to a friend who needs to hear it, or by taking a screenshot and letting me know what your favorite part was by tagging the comeback journey on your Instagram or Facebook story. Instagram is @_the comeback journey. Facebook is simply the comeback journey. I reply to each and every one of you who spreads the word and supports what this brand represents. Thank you, and I'll see you all next time.